Have you ever imagined that instead of bringing happiness, intelligence can become a trap that imprisons us in constant worries and an endless search for validation? This video will reveal why, according to certain philosophical reflections, this supposed power might be the root of many torments. If you've ever caught yourself wishing to be smarter, wiser, or quicker in thought, get ready. The answer from the great thinker behind this theory is, at the very least, surprising. While everyone is chasing the genius status, you'll discover a secret that shows how intelligence can turn into a heavy burden. And the most curious part? There's a way to free yourself from it, and it has nothing to do with acquiring more knowledge. You'll understand how certain pains are born precisely from this ability to overthink, to absorb problems that others don't even notice. You'll also see how there's an alternative no one talks about, a path that doesn't involve proving yourself to the world, but rather finding genuine peace. However, this path goes against almost everything we're taught about success and personal achievement, making this topic even more intriguing. From an early age, people are taught to admire and pursue intelligence as something desirable, almost sacred. Being smart has become synonymous with value, power, and prestige. But few ever ask, does this endless pursuit of intelligence really make someone better? Schopenhauer warns us that this desire for intellectual recognition is often nothing more than disguised vanity, a dangerous ego game seeking superiority. Notice those who flaunt their intelligence in every conversation, always ready to correct or impress. Maybe you know someone like that or have even caught yourself doing it. What lies behind this? Simply a deep, though subtle, desire to feel superior. Schopenhauer realized that the exaggerated worship of intelligence reveals a fragility disguised as strength, a constant need for external validation hiding a silent inner insecurity. However, there's something profoundly empty about using intelligence as a shield or trophy. The more someone clings to intellectual recognition, the further they drift from true wisdom. It's as if, in trying to impress the world, they completely forget who they really are. After all, when used as an ego tool, intelligence leads to the illusion of control but never to inner peace. And here's an important warning: be careful what you use to define your worth. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." This means that the obsessive pursuit of intelligence might not be a conscious choice, but rather an impulse stemming from vanity, from the fear of being forgotten or undervalued. So it's worth asking, do we really need to constantly prove ourselves? Might true human greatness lie in humility, not intellectual showmanship? How many times have you stopped to admire someone who speaks little, but when they do, it's deeply impactful? Schopenhauer believed that wisdom isn't about how much information someone accumulates, but about how deeply they understand life. It's something subtler, quieter, and perhaps even rarer than the intelligence flaunted in eloquent speeches or heated debates. While intelligence seeks recognition and approval from others, wisdom prefers the discreet path of introspection. It doesn't shout for attention or beg for applause, it simply exists, waiting to be discovered. It's in silence that the wise find their best answers. It's in the absence of words that they perceive life's nuances that go unnoticed by the hurried eyes of the crowd. You can start walking this path of wisdom today by trading a bit of noise for a few moments of quiet. Practicing meditation or simply allowing yourself to pause for a few minutes each day to reflect can be a great start. Books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius or the Tao Te Ching are excellent guides for those who want to better understand the value of silence and deep reflection. Understand that true wisdom lies beyond appearances and applause. It is patient, calm, and in no hurry to reveal itself. Instead of trying to prove something to the world, first seek to know yourself. Because as Schopenhauer wisely reminded us, knowing yourself is the hardest task of all. That's where the silent greatness that truly transforms lives resides, far beyond any apparent intelligence. If you look closely, have you noticed how, at times, the most intelligent people seem to suffer more than others? It's not a matter of coincidence or bad luck. It's an intrinsic trait of existence, as Schopenhauer keenly observed. He said that the sharper one's awareness, the more deeply they perceive the world's pain. Heightened intelligence brings a lucidity that reveals life's hidden shadows. Maybe you've felt this yourself, the anguish of deeply understanding matters that others don't even notice. It's like a sharp blade that cuts through appearances and exposes the raw reality. For Schopenhauer, this is not necessarily a punishment, but an inescapable fact of human existence. Elevated consciousness clearly perceives the injustices, imperfections, and vulnerabilities that many overlook. But how can we deal with this painful awareness, this sensitive perception of life's flaws? Schopenhauer suggests that instead of fleeing, we embrace this anguish as part of our journey. It's not about cultivating sadness, but about accepting and understanding that suffering is inherent to conscious life. By accepting this, you learn to transform what was once pain into a valuable opportunity for self-knowledge and personal growth. See, truly conscious and intelligent people don't run from pain, they learn to live with it and use it to their advantage. Schopenhauer emphasized that denying suffering is denying the reality of life. The sooner someone embraces this truth, the easier it becomes to turn anguish into wisdom and growth. After all, as Nietzsche said, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Will is like an uncontrollable impulse that pulses in every living being, an almost blind force that drives us to keep existing and acting, even when we don't fully understand why. In his view, this will is the source of desires, instincts, and passions that strongly influence our behavior. It moves us to seek what we desire, but it can also trap our minds in repetitive cycles of wanting and lacking. Imagine that feeling of needing something, even knowing that once you get it, you'll soon start desiring something else. That's the will working behind the scenes, always demanding more, never fully satisfied. Schopenhauer believed this instinctive energy is often irrational, as it leads us to actions that don't always make logical sense or bring peace of mind. And yet it sustains all life. Recognizing that this will acts within us can help explain many of our anxieties. For instance, that constant restlessness for novelty, the urge for achievements, or even the desire for recognition. Knowing there's an internal force driving us makes us look at ourselves with a bit more compassion. After all, we're humans trying to tame something as natural as breathing. To better deal with this blind will, Schopenhauer suggests closely observing our desires and impulses before acting. Practicing self-reflection and asking, what is truly motivating me right now? Or where is this desire taking me? Might be the first step to, if not mastering, at least understanding this powerful energy. It's in this honest recognition of our condition that we find the path to a more lucid and possibly more serene life. Intelligence brings with it a much deeper view of life's nuances, and that can be a constant source of discomfort. The more perceptive individual tends to see the hypocrisy, contradictions, and fragility hidden beneath our daily routines. So, while some live in a kind of peaceful ignorance, the most lucid minds carry the weight of a world without illusions. This level of awareness, though valuable, often intensifies feelings like anguish, worry, and even loneliness. It's like carrying a filter that highlights life's darker details, making it impossible to pretend things are simpler or lighter than they truly are. That's why Schopenhauer believed that those who reach a higher level of perception also carry a greater burden of suffering. Many highly intelligent people find themselves in situations where they can't share their deeper reflections, as few seem willing or even capable of understanding. This intellectual loneliness can be as suffocating as the pain of always feeling one step ahead, noticing what others may never notice. In a way, there's a longing for simplicity that haunts the spirit. However, being aware that suffering is tied to intelligence can be liberating. After all, it's not a punishment, but a natural consequence of seeing beyond the obvious. Recognizing this can inspire the search for ways to ease the anguish, such as joining discussion groups, cultivating artistic hobbies, or seeking therapy to help digest these ideas. In the end, awareness can be a blessing as long as it doesn't imprison us in our own pain. Often, accumulated knowledge is mistaken for true wisdom, as if reading countless books or mastering complex topics automatically brought inner peace. Schopenhauer pointed out that while information is a valuable tool, it doesn't guarantee personal fulfillment. After all, what good is knowing 1,000 theories if your heart remains restless? This restlessness arises when one values knowledge for knowledge's sake, forgetting that the greater goal should be to deeply understand oneself and the world. The individual who spends an entire life anxiously accumulating data and facts may end up buried under a mental overload, with no room for introspection or to truly feel existence. Who hasn't seen extremely cultured people who struggle immensely to find joy or real purpose in what they do? Schopenhauer reminds us that this excess of information, when not directed toward inner transformation, confuses more than it liberates and can become an additional source of distress. The truth is that pure knowledge, if not turned into insights that illuminate practical life, tends to hover like a cloud of concepts without lasting meaning. Reading, studying, and learning are excellent paths, but they need to be connected to a greater purpose. Without that link, one risks getting stuck in a maze of theories while the heart remains lacking in meaning. It's precisely in the combination of knowledge and self-knowledge that genuine depth is found. That may be why it's important to make space for silence, meditation, and contact with one's own emotions. As much as society values the appearance of knowing a lot, Schopenhauer suggests that the accumulation of information alone is not enough to bring serenity. What truly makes a difference is how each fragment of knowledge integrates into our worldview and transforms our way of living. That is true wisdom, far beyond any empty erudition. People often confuse accumulated knowledge with true wisdom, as if reading countless books or mastering complex topics automatically brings inner peace. Schopenhauer emphasized that although information is a valuable tool, it does not guarantee personal fulfillment. After all, what's the point of knowing 1,000 theories if the heart remains restless? This restlessness arises when knowledge is valued for its own sake, forgetting that the ultimate goal should be to deeply understand oneself and the world. The individual who spends an entire life anxiously accumulating data and facts may end up buried under a mental overload, with no room for introspection or to truly feel existence. Who hasn't seen extremely cultured people who struggle immensely to find joy or real purpose in what they do? Schopenhauer reminds us that this excess of information, when not directed toward inner transformation, confuses more than it liberates and can become an additional source of distress. The truth is that pure knowledge, if not turned into insights that illuminate practical life, tends to hover like a cloud of concepts without lasting meaning. Reading, studying, and learning are excellent paths, but they need to be connected to a greater purpose. Without that link, one risks getting stuck in a maze of theories while the heart remains lacking in meaning. It's precisely in the combination of knowledge and self-knowledge that genuine depth is found. That may be why it's important to make space for silence, meditation, and contact with one's own emotions. As much as society values the appearance of knowing a lot, Schopenhauer suggests that the accumulation of information alone is not enough to bring serenity. What truly makes a difference is how each fragment of knowledge integrates into our worldview and transforms our way of living. That is true wisdom, far beyond any empty erudition. Art has always been seen across different cultures as a bridge between the human and the sublime. For Schopenhauer, it represents a chance to temporarily free oneself from the torments caused by blind will. When contemplating a painting, a melody, or even the dance of the wind in the trees, the individual can step outside of themselves and dive into a reality where pain seems to dissolve. It's a moment of deep communion with something beyond rational understanding, yet it touches the heart directly. This transformative power of art doesn't necessarily depend on great erudition. It blooms when someone allows themselves to feel, without judgment, the beauty contained in the simplest details. It might be the silent appreciation of a painting or the awe of hearing a song capable of awakening indescribable emotions. Schopenhauer believed that in these moments, the human being experiences a pause in the cycle of suffering, almost as if they transcend themselves to inhabit a space of pure contemplation. However, it's not just about passive contemplation. Art also inspires creation, which can become a form of catharsis. By producing something beautiful, whether drawing, writing, or playing an instrument, the artist channels their pain and transforms it into expression. For Schopenhauer, this creative act is one of the highest ways to ease the tragic condition of conscious life. Beauty in this sense doesn't just enchant, it heals. In this state of fusion with the aesthetic object, the individual feels free from daily anxieties. The mind itself calms down, finding openings for peace and deep reflection. Schopenhauer saw in this aesthetic contact a window to genuine joy, something as precious as it is rare. And that's why, when experiencing art in its essence, one realizes how vast and surprising the universe can be, offering an escape route, even if temporary, from the burden we carry. Boredom arises precisely when the mind, lacking sufficient stimulation, starts to confront an unsettling emptiness. For those with heightened awareness, the feeling of having nothing to do is even more painful, as intelligence constantly seeks challenges or new ideas to fill the mental space. This emptiness becomes fertile ground for anxieties and frustrations, generating a kind of anguish that's hard to ignore. This discomfort manifests in daily life, in moments when everything around feels monotonous, repetitive, and meaningless. It's as if the soul cries out for something to fill it with purpose. The truth is, boredom is almost inevitable in a highly conscious life. The restless mind goes beyond the obvious, seeing the lack of meaning in many activities that, for others, are enough to distract their thoughts. A practical way to deal with this boredom may be to transform the search for stimulation into creation or service. When someone dedicates themselves to an artistic hobby, volunteering, or even exploring new knowledge in a purposeful way, that void tends to fill with meaning. Instead of seeing boredom as an enemy, one begins to see it as an opportunity for personal development. Deep down, this feeling points to where life lacks meaning, and where we can act to create something valuable. However, it's also important to understand that it won't always be possible to eliminate boredom completely. After all, it's part of the human condition, even more intensely for those with a more sophisticated mind. It might be wise to accept that emptiness sometimes knocks at the door, and with that awareness, learn to welcome the moment without panic. As Schopenhauer said, facing our own solitude and restlessness can, paradoxically, become a source of self-knowledge and inner growth. Schopenhauer believed that the idea that reason could solve all of humanity's problems bordered on naivety. For him, this rational progress is often an escape from the self, an attempt to circumvent the deepest anxieties of being. It's true that reason has brought many achievements to society, but when it comes to finding genuine satisfaction or happiness, it often falls short. The problem arises when people place all their hope in rationality, as if mastering technical and scientific knowledge guaranteed fulfillment. However, there are questions that logic can't answer, especially those related to the meaning of life and our inner nature. If intelligence were the ultimate solution to suffering, then the brightest minds would never experience pain, but reality shows the opposite. In our daily relationships, this illusion shows up in moments when we believe that meticulously planning everything will give us a life free of setbacks. Some people place so much trust in a method or system of organization, thinking that by following every step, they'll eliminate emptiness and loneliness. But ultimately, existential pain doesn't yield so easily to logical formulas, revealing the limits of reason's power. Schopenhauer invites us to face the fact that happiness is not an exact equation and that behind the supposed intellectual evolution of humanity still lie desires, fears, and passions that logic cannot control. Once this is acknowledged, it creates space for a more humble approach to life, accepting that not everything can be solved with arguments or theories. That's when the chance arises to find paths to peace that don't rely solely on reasoning. The idea of renouncing the will may sound strange in a world that encourages always striving for more. However, by letting go of incessant desires, the individual learns to perceive existence more clearly, without the constant sense of lack. This movement isn't about denying what one wants, but about seeing that the more we feed the will, the more it grows and enslaves us. It's the acceptance that endless wanting is often the root of our anguish. To achieve this serenity, the path lies in simplicity of choices, avoiding the unnecessary accumulation of things and goals. Instead of trying to fill every void with objects or achievements, the person turns inward. In doing so, they experience a sense of lightness, no longer carrying the weight of a hungry ego on their shoulders. What remains is a state of inner peace, far from the frantic race for approval or validation. This form of detachment doesn't mean giving up on dreams or becoming indifferent to the world. On the contrary, by letting go of the chains of will, there is more openness to live the present fully. It's as if the mind, once suffocated by desires, can finally breathe. The enjoyment of life's small pleasures, a sunset, an honest conversation, an inspiring song, begins to take the place once occupied by the anxiety of always wanting more. Those who practice this detachment discover a sense of autonomy that doesn't rely on external achievements. Freedom, then, is not in fulfilling every desire, but in recognizing that one can live well without being enslaved by the constant thirst to possess or prove something. In this sense, the great lesson lies in harmonizing the will with the simple act of existing, in a cycle of lightness that reveals what truly matters, finding contentment in one's own essence. It's curious to notice how everything we value so much, intelligence, status, knowledge, can actually hide the trap of an endless quest for approval and relief from suffering. By understanding that intelligence itself can generate anguish, we open space for a new perspective, less attachment to the reputation of being wise, more focus on inner peace. The real turning point comes when we realize that it's simplicity and self-awareness that truly set us free, not the accumulation of facts or praise. So, break the chain that keeps you tied to wanting to be the smartest, and allow yourself to discover that true serenity lies far from the obsession with recognition. Be kind to yourself, find beauty in the small things, and remember, the most transformative answers often arise in silence. Like a breath of clarity, this insight can revolutionize the way you see life. Here's my invitation for you to reflect on everything we've talked about. Is it really worth continuing the frantic race for intellectual affirmation, or could there be a lighter, more genuine path? If this question touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell. That way you'll keep receiving more content that can light your path toward a fuller, more conscious life.